Alright, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. I've been coming at you with a series of video presentations for the Rankin Technical College Application and Web Development AWD1111 .NET Framework with Web Databases class. The main textbook for the class will be, as you see on the screen, ASP.NET MVC with Entity Framework and CSS by Lee Naylor. I have decided that before going over that book, we will be covering several chapters from the Professional ASP.NET MVC 5 text by John Galloway of Microsoft and others. The reason for this is this book, in my humble opinion, goes at things in a more intuitive manner. Okay, we are up to Chapter 8, and in Chapter 8, which is on Ajax, or asynchronous JavaScript and XML, we are down near the bottom of the page beyond helpers. And the author says, if you send your browser to plugins, and I showed you this earlier, that was the plugin registry. Nope. Where was it? There it is. So if we just kind of add this, that's about 1,000, or that's about 1,300, 1,600, 1,900, 2,100, 2,300, 2,500, 2,700. So there is in the ballpark right there of close to 3,000 different plugins that people have written. And they're all set up so that rather than you having to reinvent the wheel, if you want to do something using jQuery, you oftentimes will go out first to the plugin registry to see if someone else has already created it. This is probably the most popular jQuery plugin is Jquery Ui, and I've mentioned that to you as well. All right, let's go back and take a look. I showed you the accordion, but let's look at, is there something in here? Here's color animation. Maybe not the greatest example, but notice I can click there where it says toggle effect. Pretty obvious what just happened. Toggle means click it to turn it on, click it again to turn it off. All right, and again, as always, what's nice about this is they give you all the code you need. So I can literally grab that, take it, paste it into an empty file. Will this work? We're going to find out. So I'm going to paste it into an empty file. I'm going to call it, it's right on my desktop here, color_animate.html. All right, again, will it work? I don't know. No, it doesn't look like it. So let's look at why it might not have worked. All right. Well, do we have that style sheet? Sometimes when you work with this stuff right here, you need to actually put in the HTTP : before the // All right, I'm going to try just adding that, see if that changes anything. There's toggle effect. There it is. There it is. All right. Now, there is a reason that Microsoft leaves this off, and they explained it in the chapter, and it is because sometimes this requires HTTP, and sometimes it requires HTTPS. All right. And we're going to get to that, and hopefully at least to that explanation in just a minute. All right. They talk about autocomplete using the Jquery UI here, beginning, well, the Jquery UI, they talk about beginning on page 242. Again, it's a Jquery plugin that affects effects and widgets. It integrates tightly with Jquery and extends the Jquery API. All right, this was the animation we did before. And the author says, instead of doing that verbose animation, let's take a look at how we could use the jQuery user interface to make the album bounce. All right, and there it is. Not only can you do that, but you can add special effects too. You know, do you want it to bounce for a certain amount of time? How high do you want it to bounce, etc. You can find out the values that are available and the associated defaults by looking at the plugins documentation. The jQuery UI isn't just about effects and eye candy. It also includes widgets like accordions, autocomplete, etc. So they're going through the autocomplete in here. And again, I should be able to just jump back to where we were. There's autocomplete. All right, tags. B. Notice what it does. It gives me everything with a B in it. R. All these have an R in them. Now, how about Q? There's nothing. How about Z? There's nothing. How about A? It's probably a lot of things. And it doesn't matter if it's at the beginning or someplace in here. It enables users to quickly find and select from a pre-populated list of values. Again, here's the source. So notice these are the values that you'll find. It's pre-populated with your list. So I'm going to come in here and again, add this, copy, go into here, let's open up a new window, paste it in. Let's look first in this case, we'll put in here the HTTP colon, all right, and we're going to call this, we'll save it to our desktop, we'll call this autocomplete .html, and we'll run it. Looks pretty familiar. A, there's our list. J, there's our list. So notice if I were to come back in here and add to this list, so I'm going to add a value in here. Save it and run it again. And again, put in a J. Well, that's interesting. It didn't like something that I just put in. Oh, no comma. Real easy to make a mistake in here. Come in here, put in my J, and there I am. All right. So, as a widget, autocomplete needs to position new user interface elements on the screen. It needs colors, font sizes, backgrounds, etc. A Jquery UI theme, it says there, a Jquery UI theme, so something, quite often what happens with this stuff is it'll include stuff for you to start with. All right, as they mentioned there, if you start working with jQuery and decide you don't like the theme, you can do what's called roll your own. All right. Adding the behavior here on page 244 as we make our way through the chapter here. It says, first remember the artist search. Okay, we worked on earlier. Now we want to display a list of possible artists, and that's what we had in there. But again, this system can only display the information that we give it to choose from. All right. Binding the data source on the bottom of page 244. Autocomplete expects to call a data source and receive objects in what's called a JSON format. JSON is JavaScript object notation. In many ways, JSON has replaced XML. Not totally, all right, but if I go out to json.org, another kind of ugly website, but they'll explain how JSON is used. And usually they have links in here. So if I want to look in here, JSON for ASP. All right, so I can click on there and get more information. Looks like some code repositories, etc. Again, not my goal in here to go through JSON examples with you. There's just not enough time to do this. Let's jump to page 246, and in the middle of the page, take a look at JSON and client-side templates. There are many JavaScript template libraries to choose from these days. Every library has a slightly different style and syntax, so you can pick the library that meets your needs. With much of the stuff that's in here, I'm not saying it's a crapshoot, but it'll take some investigatory work on your part to see if it's kind of like a list of pre-populated tools. But in this case, it's themes and capabilities, etc. And if you like something, you can use it. You can always go in there and extend it yourselves, or you can write your own. So they go through, and on 247, 248, 249, 250, and 251, they go back to that search form that they showed earlier, and they go in there and they rewrite that search form, but they rewrite it using Jquery plugins. Okay. All right. Back up a little bit to 251. The new Bootstrap-based ASP.NET project templates include several other useful Jquery plugins covering modals, dialogues, etc. These plugins integrate with Bootstrap classes. For example, they say there, if you want a modal dialog that launches by clicking a button. Remember, with modal, you basically have to, when you're working with modal, you have to answer it before you can go on. So if you add this, there's your modal dialog. When you technically, you can't get back to this until you either press acknowledge, all right, or close, or you click the X. These plugins are well documented, it says here, on the Bootstrap page, and include nice in-page demonstrations. All right, so they say here, if you want more, you can go to bootstrap.com JavaScript. We quickly go out there. There it is. All right, the last thing that's discussed in the last 2 or 3 pages of this chapter, which is what's left, are improving Ajax performance. The author says here, when you start sending large amounts of script code to a client, you have to keep performance in mind. Many tools are available for optimization. I have never used YSlow, for example. All right. We already talked a little bit about CDNs, or content delivery networks. It says, although you can certainly work with Jquery by saving the Jquery onto your own server, you might instead include a CDN. We've talked about what CDNs were. One other advantage of CDNs that I was kind of negligent in that I didn't mention it earlier is when you use CDNs, by and large, they always have the newest version of Jquery in that URL. But if you go and you copy a version of Jquery, okay, and it's done over time, and you forget to upgrade, then you don't have the newest version, okay? This is that thing in there with the // It says omitting the usual HTTP or HTTPS. It says this is a relative reference defined according to the RFC, I think that's request for comment, 3986. It's perfectly legal, and it's not just a neat trick. It's a really good idea when you're requesting scripts from a CDN. So it'll work regardless of whether your page is using HTTP or HTTPS. Script optimizations on the bottom of 253 and going on to 254. Many web developers do not use script tags inside the head element. Instead, they place script tags as close as possible to the bottom of the page. The problem with placing script tags inside the head is that the head loads before the body. All right? So you might try to use something before it's actually been loaded into the system. Moving all the script tags to the bottom of the page, as they mentioned on 254, can typically yield a better experience for the user. This is the kind of thing that literally developers will argue about. Another optimization technique, as it says, is to minimize the number of script tags you send to the client. All right, we talked about bundling before, and the chapter ends with talking about bundling and minification. The idea is making something smaller. It's like, for example, if I want to email something to my class at Rankin, I believe that I've got a limit on any file or files, if it's a folder that I send, that's like 5 meg. It might be 10 meg, but I think it's 5 meg. So let's say I've got something that's 6 meg. Well, I can't send it unless I break it up. Unless I come in, right mouse click on the folder, and zip it. Typically, zipping it is going to save me something. Sometimes up to 50%. Sometimes it's only, it only might be 2 or 3%. But it's a way of at least trying. All right? And when you minify, that's in essence what you're doing. When you bundle, as they say, it's a combination of a virtual path and a list of files to include in that bundle. There's the bundle, and there's the files in the bundle. The bundle, the files in the bundle, etc. After you have your bundles configured, you can render the bundles as shown there. So this chapter was a combination of jQuery and jQuery and how it relates to Ajax, which again, asynchronous JavaScript and XML. It says there, the key to success with Ajax and ASP.NET MVC5 is understanding jQuery. That's why that was most of the chapter. We also looked a little bit at JSON, but not much. All right. When I come back tomorrow with the next lecture in here, it'll be chapter 9, which is on routing. Again, then we will skip 10, NuGet, skip 11, ASP.NET Web API, skip 12, single page applications with AngularJS, skip 13, dependency injection, do 14, unit testing, do 15, extending MVC, do 16, advanced topics, skip 17. Real world ASP.NET MVC, building the NuGet website. So that's it for chapter 8. We will start on chapter 9 next.